What is up, fight nerds and dirty gamblers? Welcome back. I am Erik, and this is Erik Bets Fights. Today we're going to be doing a full card breakdown and talking about our best bets for this weekend's UFC card. I think it's UFC Vegas 47. I don't know. It's the Jack Hermansson versus Sean Strickland card anyway. I think they all have 2 or 3 different names now, but yeah. So we're gonna start off with something a little bit different though before we actually get into the full card breakdown here. I'll admit this is just a little bit of a ploy to try to get people to interact with my videos a little bit more, but we're going to start off with our trivia question of the day. Here's today's question. Billed at 616 pounds, who was the heaviest fighter to ever fight in the UFC? I'll give you a little bit of a hint. I don't know how helpful this is, but later in life he was over 700 pounds, and I think maybe even over 800 pounds at one point, and he was recognized by Guinness World Records as the heaviest athlete in the world. If you know his name, go ahead and throw it in the comments for me down there, folks. Maybe we can get a little bit of little commenting and interacting going on the video. So, yeah, that's our trivia question of the day. Go ahead and let me know if you know the answer. And if you don't, I'm sure Google does. Go ahead and Google it and put the answer down there. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and jump right into breaking down this card. We're going to start at the top of the card and work our way down, so we'll be starting with the headlining fight first. Our main event this Saturday is Jack Hermansson versus Sean Strickland. Strickland currently the favorite at minus 205. Comeback on Hermansson as the underdog is plus 195. Before I went into the tape study for this fight, I was expecting to potentially find a bet on Hermansson. When I saw him, I was like, Jack Hermansson at 2-to-1 odds against anybody. I thought could end up potentially being a good bet, but I do see some people on him. But after going through the tape, I decided that even at those 2-to-1 odds, I don't really like a bet on Hermansson here. I do think Strickland is going to prove to be the better fighter pretty much everywhere. Hermansson's certainly not a scrub on the feet. He's obviously got a great ground game. But I think Strickland's the better boxer. And if we look at the Uriah Hall fight, we saw Strickland prove that he can go 5 hard rounds. He can keep his output high for 25 minutes. We didn't really see his cardio flag there. Also, Strickland, despite his reputation as kind of a wild man, he does show to have a pretty good fight IQ. He conserves his energy well. He picks his spots well. He understands where he wants to be, where he wants the fight to be, and how to get it there. So even if we do see Hermansson go to a wrestling-heavy approach here, if he's able to get takedowns on Strickland, do I think he'll be able to take him down? Probably. I'm not sure if he'll be able to take him down consistently, and even if he can, I don't think Strickland is one of those guys who's just going to settle in, on his back and look to work his guard or anything. He's going to be looking to get up. He's a scrambly, strong, tricky guy, and I do think he's going to be able to get up. So I do see this fight playing out largely on the feet. I think Strickland is going to be the better boxer who's just going to have the better output. He's not the kind of guy who has that one-hitter quitter kind of power, but he's the kind of guy who is able to put out really good volume, and he can land on you repeatedly with enough power that he can kind of get that death by 1,000 cuts sort of, Diaz-style thing going on where he can potentially finish fights by just having that volume add up over time. So I do lean Strickland to win. He's got 5 rounds to work with. Is it going to finish inside the distance? I don't know. I could see it going to decision. I could also see Strickland finding, probably not a knockout, but like a ref stoppage late in the fight. You know what? Heck with it. I'm gonna call Strickland by ref stoppage late in round 4. How about that? All right, our next fight, which is the co-main event for some reason, I have no idea why, is Puna Soriano versus Nick Maximov. The first thing I'll say about this fight is I think this could potentially be a really good live betting spot, and this is why. So the basic breakdown of this fight, Soriano is pretty well-rounded. He does look to use his strikes more. He has wrestling in his back pocket. We've seen him use it. He did wrestle in high school and in college. But he's more of a boxer. He's obviously got a lot of power, a lot of athleticism. If he lands, he does hurt you. Maximov has really good wrestling. Maximov has really good wrestling. and really good jiu-jitsu. His striking is definitely a work in progress. I mean, the kid's only 23 years old. He's obviously got an excellent background in jiu-jitsu, but he's still kind of putting together that full MMA game, you know. We see him, not that his striking looks awful, but it's definitely a work in progress. You know, it's definitely it's going to be some time before his striking starts to catch up with his grappling. But one thing I really like about Nick Maximov's grappling is I think he has a wrestling game that is really well suited for MMA. You know, we've seen really excellent, you know, freestyle and Greco wrestlers in the past who have moved into MMA and just haven't had much luck with their wrestling there because it's a different game, you know. I think Maximov has really good MMA wrestling. And part of the evidence we see for that is that we'll see him, like, okay, for example, we'll see him shoot for a double or a single, whatever it might be, get his arms locked. Like, let's say he's got his hands locked for like a high crotch lift, like single leg type takedown. If he's working that and he's not getting it, he has no problem chaining and moving to something else. I mean, even if he feels his opponent's balance moving a certain way or their body moving a certain way, he'll let that attempt go and even like jump straight onto their back, that kind of thing. So I think he has really good positional awareness, even standing, and you know, it can be easy for a wrestler to be like, okay, this is the takedown I'm working on. I've got the body lock, and they just work for it and work for it and work for it, even if they're not getting it, without necessarily thinking about like, is this even what I want right now? I think Maximov does a good job of seeing other opportunities and realizing that maybe what he's working on isn't the best thing and switching to something else. So I do like to see that. But the reason I think this is potentially a good live betting spot is I think it's really tough to know what the dynamic between these two is going to look like until we start to see it play out. Puna is definitely going to be the better striker. We would assume that Maximov is going to be looking to get it to the ground immediately. He's not going to want to hang out in box with Puna any longer than he has to. But how much luck is he going to have there? It's kind of hard to say. So I think once we get a few minutes into this fight and we get to see sort of like, it's going to be clear like, okay, Maximov can't get Puna down and Puna is eating him up on the feet, or, oh, wow, okay, Maximov is able to get takedowns here and he's controlling Puna on the ground. Like, from the tape I was able to watch, I don't feel comfortable making that call one way or another pre-fight, so this is definitely going to be just kind of a keep an eye on the live betting spot here. But, you know, and we have seen, because Puna throws everything with such power, we have seen Puna start to fade later in fights too, so, you know, if Maximov is able to have some luck with his grappling, I mean, even if Puna is able to get back up, if Maximov is able to take him back down, and there's a lot of up and down and a lot of grappling exchanges, are we going to see Puna start to tire? I think after I just made fun of it for being the co-main event, now I'm talking about like why I actually think it's kind of an interesting matchup the more I think about it. But yeah, I'm gonna choose Puna. If I have to make a pick here, I'm gonna say Puna by stoppage late in round 2. Let's go with that. But yeah, I don't really feel comfortable making that call until I kind of see how the dynamic plays out between these two a little bit. It's a fun fight. Next up, we've got Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Carlston Harris. Where are the betting odds here? Shavkat is a pretty big favorite at minus 221. Comeback as the underdog on Harris at plus 198. This is a really interesting fight. This is kind of the people's main event in a way, right? Two really, really solid prospects that both have solid, well-rounded games. Obviously, Shavkat, we can tell just by looking at the odds here, Shavkat is definitely the bigger, more touted prospect. You know, Harris didn't necessarily have a lot of steam behind him as far as expectations coming into the UFC, but he's looked really good so far. He's had 2 UFC fights. He's finished them both in the first round, I think. He had, where do you have, 1 submission and 1 stoppage by strikes? My memory doesn't always serve me so well after watching tape, so if I'm wrong about that, let me know in the comments. But Shavkat has he cut his teeth fighting in M1 over in Russia. I feel like, maybe I'm stereotyping a little bit here, but I feel like even if you're fighting scrubs in Russia, you're still fighting some pretty tough guys. So, I mean, even though he's, fairly new to the UFC, he's definitely got some good experience behind him fighting in M1. And the consensus on Shavkat seems to be that he's someone pretty special, and I think that could be true. He's got a really well-rounded game. He's obviously really, big for the division. He's got a long reach. But same with Carlston Harris. So this is a situation where Shavkat is going to be going up against someone where he's not going to necessarily have that size advantage. Harris is another big physical guy in this weight class, so I think that that's a pretty good test for Shavkat. I do think that Shavkat should be favored here. Probably not quite as much as he is based on my read watching tape anyway. I was almost thinking Shavkat would be more like, I don't know, maybe minus 170 or something like that. So based on that read, I do think you can say that there might be some value on Harris as the underdog here if you can get him up around plus 190, even up to plus 198. I'm seeing him here at FanDuel. I'm not going to bet Harris here. I haven't right now. If he got up even a little bit higher, I don't think he's probably going to at this point, but, if he got up to like plus 220 or something like that, I may have to take a little stab on him. But this is, as Clint from the Die Hard MMA podcast would say, this is just a fireball and popcorn fight for me. I'm just interested in seeing the dynamic between these two, seeing how this fight plays out. I'm not going to worry about betting it. I'm just going to sit back and watch it happen. If I had to choose, see, you can tell a lot of these I didn't actually decide ahead of time what my pick was going to be. Kind of just basing it on my discussion in the moment. I do lean Rakhmonov to win. Like I said, I do favor him. I'm going to say by decision because I do think Harris is pretty tough and could hang in there. Next on the slate, we've got Sam Alvey versus Brendan Allen. Brendan Allen, big favorite at minus 400 here. Come back on Sam Alvey is plus 325 as the dog. I did not watch tape on Allen as he relates to this fight. I did watch the tape on this fight when Alvey had his previous opponent, which was Phil Hawes. I always get Hawes and Rowe mixed up. Yeah, Phil Hawes, right? Yeah. I don't know. What can you really say about Sam Alvey at this point? He's on a 7-fight winless streak. The UFC keeps him around just because he's a likable character. Dana really likes him. Good old smiling Sam. Everybody loves the guy. He's a company man. He's always willing to step in against anybody. He's willing to step in last minute. He doesn't even care what weight class. If you offered Sam Alvey a fight at heavyweight on a week's notice, I guarantee you he'd take it. He doesn't care. He's just looking to get in there, put on a show, make some money. I don't even know if he cares that much about winning at this point. Sure, he'd like to win, but he's just out there. He's just out there to have some fun and make some money, I think. But, the sort of the narrative on Sam Alvey remains to this day that he's low volume, but he's got that howitzer in his right hand, and all he has to do is land one, and he can finish you. But we just haven't seen that for so long. He barely throws any strikes. He loves backing himself up against the cage where he can't really move and can't really work, and then he just hangs out and waits for opportunities to throw strikes. But those opportunities never present themselves, so then he doesn't throw. Yes, we've seen Sam Alvey have power and knock people out in the past, but it's been so long that I'm just not sold on that narrative anymore. The idea that, he's a big underdog here and Allen is favored, but all Alvey has to do is land one, I don't buy into that. I really don't. I don't like Alvey's chances here much at all. I think that the odds are accurate. If you do like Alvey, I would potentially look to bet his KO prop. I don't know what that is, but he's at plus 325. I'm sure his KO prop is at least plus 500 or plus 600 or something. I'm just guessing. But, if you're going to bet him, what are you betting on? You're betting on him finding that punch. He's not going to put out enough output to win a decision here. So it's Alvey by KO or he loses. So, I'm staying away from this one. I'm just going to sit back and watch it. But, if you're super confident in Allen, could you parlay him? I probably wouldn't at minus 400 in case Alvey does find that big KO punch. But if you're looking to bet this fight, maybe look at that Alvey KO prop. Next up, we've got what should have been the Ultimate Fighter finale. We've got Brian Battle, currently the underdog at plus 145 versus Treyshawn Gore, favored at minus 150. It's pretty hard to get a read on Treyshawn Gore, simply because there's not that much footage of him out there, and the footage that you can find isn't very good. I watched his fight in NFC with, I believe the guy's name was LJ Gordon, and it's like the production was so bad. It's literally so dark in the cage that you can barely even see what's happening. There's parts where like they fall into part of the cage that's literally in a shadow, and you can't even see what's happening. So anyway, Treyshawn Gore he's obviously a powerful guy, an athletic guy. He does definitely have somewhat of a ground game. It's tough to get much of a read on it from the footage I was able to find. He likes to throw. He can throw hard strikes. If he lands, it can be problematic, but he pretty much just throws single strikes. Whereas Bryan Battle, I think Bryan Battle has a better overall MMA game. He likes to throw big kicks. He likes to come forward. He's not super busy, but he puts out a decent amount of volume. And I think Bryan Battle has good optics because he's a guy who he's how do I describe this exactly? He's one of those fighters who just the way he carries himself in the ring, the way he throws his strikes, the way he moves forward, he just comes across as very confident. Like sometimes if a fight is close and you think about what the judges are seeing, I think it can literally come down to like, well, that guy, he just looked really confident in there. He had a way that he carried himself, a way that he threw his strikes where he felt like he was winning. And I think that body language can sometimes get into a judge's head. So I think Bryan Battle he's pretty well rounded. He's very tough. He's going to pressure you and come forward. He's going to look good doing it. Like I said, it's pretty tough to get a read on this fight from what I was able to find. But I think Battle has been a pretty popular underdog here for people betting, and I can definitely see why. I think unless Treyshawn Gore is able to find one big shot and hurt Bryan Battle and take him out, which, like I said, Battle's a tough guy. It seems unlikely to me. I think Battle has the better overall game. I think he's going to be able to move forward and land more strikes. I don't really know how I see this fight playing out. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Treyshawn Gore fades a little bit down the stretch. Bryan Battle keeps the pressure on him, and I'm going to say Battle finds a submission in round 3. I'm not confident of that, but yeah, I definitely don't hate a bet on Bryan Battle here. I do think I can see an argument for favoring him, and he is currently an underdog, so not a bad play there. Next fight, we've got Julian Juicy J. Rosa versus Steven Ocho Peterson. This is an interesting fight. What can you say about these guys, right? One thing that kept popping into my head while I was doing tape on Juicy J was I really like his striking offense a lot, but he has no striking defense. He strikes me as a guy who could be a pretty special fighter if he would just shore up certain deficiencies in his game. One of those, perhaps the largest one, being his lack of striking defense. He holds his hands really low. He just gets wild and leaves openings. He almost seems like one of those guys who likes to get hit, or he definitely doesn't mind it. One of those, like they say, take one to give one kind of thing. He holds his hands low, his chin's in the air, he's taking shots, and he seems to like it that way. He likes the dog fight where he's giving some and taking some. So I do think Rosa is the better fighter here. He has the longer reach. I think he's the better striker. I think he's also got pretty decent wrestling. We have seen him find submissions. He's got decent jiu-jitsu as well. I think he's the better fighter all around. However, Peterson is one of those guys, and you're going to hear me say something similar when we get to Marc-Andre Barriault here, or you've already heard me say it if you watched my breakdown video on Barriault versus Angelo, but Peterson is one of those blue-collar fighters who comes in and puts in a workmanlike performance. He's not going to knock your socks off with his skill set. He's not particularly good anywhere, but he's solid everywhere. He's tough. He's going to come in there and he's just going to use a solid, well-rounded but not spectacular game, and he's a guy who's in the fight. He's going to be there the full 15 minutes. If you can't take him out, he's going to be there. He's going to be coming forward. He's going to be looking to finish the fight. But yeah, I do. Unless the fight goes long and Rosa starts to tire out, and Rosa is one of those fighters who can make mistakes. So if Peterson is able to capitalize on one of those, it's hard to say. I do think there's probably value on. So Peterson's at plus 260 right now, which would be an implied win probability of like 28%. Do I think he has a better chance of winning than that? Maybe. I haven't bet him here, but I can see an argument for there being some value, and I know some pretty sharp people are betting him here. But I almost feel like the line might be accurate. After watching the tape, I was just like, yeah, I think Rosa is just the better fighter everywhere. But like I said, the one reason I could see an excuse for making a bet on Peterson is that Rosa does make mistakes, he does get wild in there and leave openings, and Peterson's the kind of guy who might be able to see and capitalize on those things. So I guess make your own judgments based on that. But I do lean Rosa to win here. Peterson's tough, so I think I'm going to pick Rosa by decision here. Next up, we've got Miles Johns versus John Castaneda. Betting odds, John's currently at about -178. Castaneda can still be had for as high as +200 at BetMGM. He's closer to like 160, +160, +170 in most places, though. But Castaneda's another popular underdog this week, and I think people who are betting Castaneda are largely doing it based on the read that this fight could play out really closely. These guys have somewhat similar skill sets. They're both decent wrestlers, but they both tend to just kind of go with the boxing more often than not. So, I think there's a good chance that this fight plays out on the feet, largely with the boxing. And based on that read, I can see why people believe that it might, play out close and be sort of a split decision kind of thing. I do favor Miles Johns to win here. I was pretty impressed with Miles Johns watching the tape on him. He's quick, he hits hard, he sets up his shots well. I think he picks his shots well. He lands hard leg kicks. He's also one of those guys who has really nice optics as far as his striking. He's the kind of guy that even if you outland him numbers-wise, there's a good chance that he's going to outland you, or he's going to land the strikes that have the more impact. We sometimes see a fighter win a decision, even though that maybe their opponent outlanded them with landed twice as many strikes, but they landed the fewer strikes but the harder strikes that snapped their opponent's head back, that got their opponent's attention, that actually caused their opponent to sort of stumble. Miles Johns is that kind of fighter. He punches hard, he hits hard. If he lands, you're going to know it. Castaneda also is a pretty hard puncher, but he spends a lot of time kind of looking at his opponent. In the footage I watched, it kind of kept popping into my head that he doesn't put out a lot of output. He spends a lot of time kind of taking pictures and waiting for his spot. And so I do think there's a good chance that this fight plays out largely in the boxing. I think Miles Johns is going to throw more. He's probably going to land the harder shots. And so, either of these guys could potentially find a finish. They do both hit hard. Either of these guys could find the other's chin and finish. But I'm going to lean toward thinking that Miles Johns just throws more, throws the harder strikes, mixes it up better, possibly lands some leg kicks to slow Castaneda down, and then Miles Johns is just going to find a fairly comfortable decision. I could see the fight playing out closely, but I do think Miles Johns will be the better fighter here. I don't have a bet on that fight. I would probably agree that it's a dog or pass kind of situation, though, if I was going to bet it, especially if I could still get that +200 line on Castaneda. If you put a gun to my head and I had to bet it, that's probably what I'd bet here. Next up, we've got Hakeem Dawodu versus Mike Trizano. What do we got for odds here? Dawodu currently the favorite at about -162. Trizano, comeback on him is +165. I think this is a good fight. I think I do mostly agree with those odds. I do think Dawodu should be favored here. My read after watching the tape was I really do think Dawodu is going to be the better fighter everywhere here. Trizano has been kind of a popular underdog as well, and again, people are basing that on the idea that this fight is probably going to play out on the feet and could be kind of a close kickboxing match that could go to a split decision kind of thing, and why not take the value when it's potentially going to be a close fight like that. I don't necessarily know that the fight is going to be close. I might look like a dumbass here for saying this, but I think Dawodu is the better fighter everywhere, and I think that that's going to play out that way in this fight. I think Dawodu hits harder. I think he's the better technical striker. He's got good takedown defense. He's got good submission defense. I think Trizano is the longer guy, but my read on Trizano was that he does a lot of stalking. He does a lot of cutting off the cage, but he doesn't actually throw a lot of strikes. So I think there's going to be a lot of stalking going on, a lot of kind of moving around and circling, but I think Dawodu's going to be throwing more. I think he's going to be landing the harder strikes. Another thing, Dawodu throws very fast and snappy and hard leg kicks, and Trizano has one of those stances where he's got that long lead leg just hanging out there. I think Dawodu might make hamburger out of Mike Trizano's leg here as well. So yeah, I just think Hakeem is going to be the faster, more powerful striker. He's going to mix it up better. He's going to land more. You know, what did I say? Dawodu's currently at -162. After watching the tape here, I was comfortable lining him even higher than that. You know, maybe I'm going to look like a dumbass for thinking that, but I believe I did put Dawodu in a parlay. I'm going to go over all my bets that I have on the card at the end of the video here, but yeah, I think it'll probably go to decision. I lean Dawodu to take a pretty comfortable decision here, outlanding Trizano. Next up, we've got Marc-Andre Barriault versus Chidi Njokuani. Almost a coin flip here. Currently, Barriault at about -110, Njokuani at about +106. I do have a bet here. I actually bet Barriault when he was at about -130, so I've actually thought about adding to it a little bit now that the odds are even better than that, but I haven't. But my breakdown here, again, Barriault, like I said earlier, Barriault is one of those fighters who's just kind of a blue-collar guy. He's not spectacular anywhere. He's not going to blow your mind with his amazing striking skills or his amazing grappling skills, but he's just kind of solid everywhere. Unspectacular, but solid kind of guy. He has good cardio. He can keep a good pace for 15 minutes. He does like to pressure. He does like to come forward. I did a full breakdown video of this fight, so if you want a little more, go ahead and find that. It's just a couple, probably the last video I did actually. But Chidi Njokuani is a very good striker. He's one of those strikers, you know, sort of similar to an Izzy Adesanya and Anderson Silva, that kind of thing. He's long. He likes to stay out in open space. He likes to stay at distance and use that length that he has. He likes to throw a lot of kicks. He throws his punches from distance there too. He's got the kind of reach where he can, you know, he can get at you with his punches even when you're at a range where you can't get at him. But as far as the striking, he kind of needs to be given that space to work. He needs to stay at that distance. And Barriault is the kind of fighter who's gonna, it's not reckless pressure, it's measured, consistent pressure, but he's the kind of guy who's gonna stay in your face. He's gonna move you forward. And one thing that we've seen that Njokuani can kind of fall prey to is being held against the cage for long periods of time. And he believes in his jiu-jitsu game off his back enough that if you can take him down, he will kind of settle in and try to play his guard game there. So as long as Barriault comes in with a smart game plan here, which I think he will, I believe he's working at Sanford. I think he's going to come in with a smart game plan. I think he's going to understand that he needs to pressure forward. He needs to hold Njokuani against the cage, make it dirty with that dirty boxing. He needs to Barriault's not a guy who typically goes to his wrestling a lot, but that, you know, could be a smart game plan for him here, you know, if he's able to get takedowns and work on the ground. But yeah, if Barriault hangs out and allows Njokuani to work his distance striking game, it's going to be problematic for him. But I definitely lean toward thinking Barriault is going to use that smart game plan, pressure forward, hold Njokuani against the cage and that sort of thing. So like I said, I did bet, I believe it was 1.5 units on Barriault here when he was at -130. You can get an even better line on him now. I do like a bet on Barriault here. I'm gonna say Barriault by decision for as far as my pick. Next up, we've got Alexis Davis versus Julia Stoliarenko. Alexis Davis is up as high as -222 as a favorite. Stoliarenko, comeback on her is +205. This is I've seen a lot of people saying like, oh yeah, there's every underdog on this card has value, except maybe Stoliarenko. Stoliarenko, just as far as what we've seen from her, she really isn't very good. She can't really wrestle. She doesn't seem to have a lot of physicality. She's easy to control. She has a hard time dictating where she wants the fight to be. People have called her kind of the dollar store Ronda Rousey because she does have a bunch of wins by armbar in the first round too, I think. So she can finish fights that way against lower level competition, but she's just had a really hard time getting anything going at the UFC level against better competition. Alexis Davis is getting a little long in the tooth at this point. I don't have the number in front of me right now, but I think she must be 36, 37, something like that. She's been around for a long time. She's again one of those fighters who's able to put on kind of a workmanlike performance. I do lean Alexis Davis to win here. I think Alexis Davis will be able to dictate where the fight takes place. She'll be able to hold Stoliarenko up against the cage. The only way that I can see Alexis Davis losing here is if Stoliarenko is somehow able to catch her sleeping and throw her legs up and get that arm bar. I do not think that's likely. I did put Davis in a parlay, which I'll talk about when I get to the end here and go through my bets. If you wanted to just put something crazy on this fight for fun, I think betting Stoliarenko by sub could be a fun prop to look at here. I don't know what it's at. I don't have that number in front of me. I thought I heard somebody say it was at like plus 800 or something like that. If you're the kind of person who likes to bet fights just to kind of make them more interesting, that could be a fun little thing to take a sprinkle on. But I do not think it's likely, which obviously is suggested by the odds here. But yeah, I definitely do lean Alexis Davis to win this fight. I'm good. My official pick will be Alexis Davis by decision. Just a few fights left to go, folks. Next up, we've got Danilo Marquez versus Jailton. I don't know. Danilo Marquez versus Jailton Almeida. Odds here are currently Marquez at plus 360, Almeida at minus 400. I think these numbers are insane. As soon as I finished the tape on this fight, I saw what those odds were at, and I took a little sprinkle on Danilo Marquez. Do I favor him to win? No. But I think this fight on paper is much closer than that. What plus 360 is like? What is that? Let me see. I've got my mug here from Z. Check out Z's MMA if you want to get this mug. It's got the favorites and the underdogs, so you don't have to pull up your implied probability calculator all the time. You can just look at this. So Danilo Marquez is currently at plus 360. So if we look at our underdogs here, plus 400 is 20%, plus 300 is 25%. So plus 360 must be what, like 22, 23%, something like that? I think that's insane, and this is why. These guys are similar size and have a similar skill set, a similar approach to the fight. Do I think Almeida should be favored? Absolutely, I do. Almeida is the more physical guy. I think he's the better athlete. I think he's the stronger guy. They both have great ground games, and they both have pretty low-level striking. I think Almeida, like I said, Almeida's the more athletic guy. If you watch Marquez on the feet striking and when he's shooting takedowns, he's not very athletic. He's slow. Man, when he shoots a takedown, it is glacially slow. The guy's shooting the takedown like his feet are stuck in molasses. So, I mean, I'm not saying I have a lot of great things to say about the guy. I just think that those numbers are off, especially if we take into account that this is going to be Almeida's coming off the Contender Series. This is going to be his first actual fight in the UFC. Not that Marquez has looked excellent in the UFC, but he's got 2 UFC wins, I believe. And, he's been fighting at that higher level. He's shown the ability to have success at the UFC level. And when you've got 2 guys who are going to have, both pretty low-level striking, are both going to be looking to grapple. One of them has been fighting at a higher level. It's hard for me to see how that guy should be a plus 360 underdog. So, I think I only put half a unit on it. But if I had to pick the fight, I am going to pick Almeida to win. I'm going to... You know what? No, I'm not. I'm going to put my mouth where my money is. I'm going to pick Marquez to win here. I'm going to pick Marquez to win by submission late in round 3. Don't take that pick to the bank because I don't feel great about that. But the more I think about it, Marquez just he's got, I think he's going to bust out that veteran savvy. Almeida's a guy who's got good athleticism. He's got good strength. He's got a good ground game. But I could see him going a little bit crazy and tiring himself out. I'm just making up narratives in my head now, folks. Don't even listen to me. But yeah, I did bet Marquez, and heck with it. I want to pick Marquez here too. I'm probably going to look like an idiot for that pick, but I don't mind. Y'all aren't paying me for this. I'm just sitting here talking about what I think. So what's the difference, right? All right, next fight we've got Jason Witt versus Philip Rowe. Jason Witt currently the underdog at plus 120. Philip Rowe favored at minus 120. So pretty darn close. Not quite a coin flip, but sort of close. This is to some degree, kind of a striker versus grappler matchup. Obviously, they both have well-rounded skills. Everybody has to in MMA at this point. But Phil Rowe is a very long, he's got like an 80-inch reach. He's a very long striker who also does have a solid ground game. I mean, the guy just had a grappling match with Gordon Ryan 2-3 months ago. So, I mean, I believe he is well, of course, he's a black belt. He probably wouldn't be going up against Gordon Ryan if he wasn't a BJJ black belt. But yeah, he has a BJJ black belt. He's got to believe in his jiu-jitsu game, or he wouldn't be going out there and getting on the mat with Gordon Ryan, because that's a death sentence. So he's solid there as well. He can be taken down, as we've seen, and Jason Witt is a guy who he doesn't have a great chin, so that does concern me a little bit here. He can definitely get rocked, and he also, Jason Witt tends to hang out at kind of long distance when he's on the feet, and then he looks to sort of jump in with single strikes. And what worries me a little bit here is that Jason Witt is used to hanging out at a distance where he can't be hit by his opponent. But I'm a little bit worried that distance that he's used to hanging out at against other opponents is a distance where Phil Rowe is going to be able to hit him. So that's a little bit of a concern, but hopefully he can kind of figure that out and adjust to that reach and that distance. But I see this fight playing out with Witt being able to get takedowns and being able to probably hold Rowe down. I did actually end up placing a bet here. I did place a bet on... let me pull up my bet here and see what the heck I did exactly. Okay, I did put 1 unit on Jason Witt when he was at plus 115. Like I said, there's definitely a possibility that Phil Rowe can land on Witt and find the knockout here. I don't hugely favor Witt here, but after watching the tape, I thought it was reasonable to consider Witt a small favorite. And then when I saw that he was a small underdog, I thought there was a little bit of value there, so I did go ahead and put a little bit of a bet on him there. So we're just going to cross our fingers that Rowe doesn't find that big shot with that 80-inch reach and drop Witt and finish him. And as long as that doesn't happen, I do think there's a good chance that Witt will be able to wrestle his way to a decision. And finally, the card will be kicking off with kind of a weird fight. Malcolm Gordon versus Denis Bondar. Bondar is currently at minus 250, the favorite, and Gordon, the underdog, at plus 240. This is a weird fight. It's really hard to get a read on it. It's hard to get a read on Malcolm Gordon. This is one thing that kept popping into my head while I was watching tape on Malcolm Gordon, is that he seems like a guy who's never quite sure what he wants to do in there. He doesn't seem like he has a game plan. It seems like he's just doing whatever pops into his head in the moment. But then the funny thing about it is, it seems like something will pop into his head and he'll commit to it 100%. He'll decide, all right, I'm going to shoot a takedown. I'm doing this. And he'll shoot a takedown with everything he's got. But then it's almost like he gets 2/3 of the way through the takedown, and even though he was 100% committed to it a split second ago, he all of a sudden changes his mind and decides to do something else. There's just something really weird about the way he is up there. He throws this, and then he tries that, and then he tries that, and it's just kind of he'll throw a punch so hard that he like almost falls down because he's throwing himself off balance. He's just wild. He just doesn't seem to have much of a game, much of an ability to kind of have a game plan and put it all together. He's kind of just doing whatever, and so it's kind of hard to get a read on him because of that. So, I mean, I think a big part of the reason that Bondar is favored here is simply because he's a guy who at least seems to have some idea what he wants to do in there. He's a guy that it seems to at least have, he's got the skills, the ability to put them together, the ability to sort of have a game plan, and at least in moment to moment and second to second to have some idea what it is that he wants to do and how he wants to do it. Whereas Malcolm Gordon is kind of just changing his mind from second to second about what he's trying to do, it seems like. I wasn't only able to watch one older fight from Denis Bondar. He does seem pretty well-rounded. I didn't bet this fight, and if I was going to, this is a dog or pass situation to me. I don't want to put money on Malcolm Gordon for all the reasons I already mentioned. I also definitely don't want to lay like minus 250 chalk on a guy who's making his UFC debut and who definitely seems to have some holes in his game as well. I would just stay away from this one personally. It's dog or pass with an emphasis on the pass. But yeah, if I was gonna bet it, I would definitely put a little sprinkle on Malcolm Gordon. But don't sprinkle Malcolm Gordon. Don't do that. Let's go ahead and take a look at all my bets for this card. I've got a straight bet 1.5 units on Marc-Andre Barriault at -130. You can get an even better number on him now, like I said. I've got 1 unit on Jason Witt versus Phil Rowe. Witt is at +115, or was when I made the bet. I've got a half unit sprinkle on Danilo Marquez at +325, because like I said, that number seems absolutely crazy to me. I do have a couple parlays. I've got Sean Strickland to win and Shavkat Rakhmonov to win. That parlay together was +115. I've got 2 units on that. I've got Alexis Davis to win and Hakeem Dawodu to win, +126 total. I've got 1 unit on that. And then I do have 1.5 units on Jason Witt and Phil Rowe to go over 1.5 rounds. That was one of those where it seemed kind of weird to me that it was set at 1.5. If it was 2.5, I probably wouldn't touch it, but I do like that fight to go over 1.5 rounds. And as you can see, folks, if you look to the right of each of the bets there's the little notebook with the pencil. That means I've got a write-up for that bet. It's largely some of the same stuff I've ever said, I've already said here, but I do go into a lot more detail on the write-ups. So if you ever want to check those out, you can just go to betmma.tips/erikblock. That's ERIKBLOCK. You can always access all my bets there for free, as well as my write-ups for free. You can also find me on Twitter at erikbetsfights. Besides, talking about some of my bets and that sort of thing, I also put out some daily content, pretty much every day anyway. I put out a trivia question, a post about today in MMA history, and then I've also started highlighting some forgotten fighters, just kind of some fighters from years ago in the UFC that we maybe don't talk about much anymore, or that we've kind of forgotten about. I sort of throw them out there and highlight them and put up their record and some of the people they've fought and that sort of thing. And I also just kind of try to make some dumb, funny posts and that sort of thing as well. And you can also find me, of course, you already know this if you're here, right here on YouTube. Make sure to look through some of my past videos if you haven't. I've been trying to put out some little comedy videos and stuff like that. I did a fake interview with George St. Pierre recently that I was pretty happy with how that turned out. I'm going to be looking to do some more of that sort of thing too. I might do a fake interview with Conor McGregor. I'm not sure when I'm going to have time to actually work on that, but that might be something that I try to do next year. But oh, that is enough blabbing from me. My throat is giving out. Thank you so much if you've made it this far. I really, really appreciate those of you who are following me on Twitter, following me on YouTube, checking out my content and that sort of thing. Just a reminder, I am not a professional gambler, nor am I any kind of gambling expert. I'm just an MMA nerd who likes to bet fights. So if you tail my picks, you do so at your own risk. Just a reminder there. As always, thanks so much for joining me for this and just for being along for the ride here. Just reminding you to play it smart, play it tight, and let's grow those bankrolls. Have a great weekend, everybody.